The galaxy had known about humans for 142 years. In all that time, nobody had ever been afraid of them. They were traders, farmers, builders. They smiled too much, talked too much, and seemed to care about things that no other species cared about, like art and music and the way sunlight looked on water. The great empires of the galaxy looked at humanity and saw nothing worth fearing. That was their first mistake. The Dominion of Kel was the largest empire in known space. It stretched across 900 star systems and ruled over dozens of species, most of them conquered, all of them obedient. Emperor Vorath sat on a throne made from the metals of dead worlds, and he believed truly and completely that the galaxy belonged to him. His armies were vast. His ships darkened the skies of any world that dared to resist, and now his eyes had turned toward the human border colonies. The colonies were small, quiet. They sat along a stretch of space that the Dominion wanted for its expansion routes, and Vorath did not ask for things. He took them. But humanity's government, the United Terran Federation, believed in talking first. They always believed in talking first. So they sent a diplomatic ship to meet with the Dominion and negotiate a treaty that would keep the peace. They sent 3 of their best. General Yuna was the commander of the 7th Solar Fleet. The soldiers who served under her called her the Iron Lotus, because she was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful, and twice as sharp. She had fought in 2 border conflicts and won both without losing a single capital ship. She believed that war was the failure of intelligence, and she had never failed. General Hana commanded the Deep Space Reconnaissance Division. Her entire career was built on being where the enemy did not expect her to be, striking before they knew she was there, and vanishing before they could respond. She was small, quiet, and the most dangerous person in any room she entered. General Minji led the Planetary Defense Corps. She was called the Wall because in her entire career, no enemy had ever broken through a position she held. She was calm, patient, and absolutely immovable. Where Yuna was the sword and Hana was the shadow, Minji was the shield that never cracked. The 3 of them boarded the diplomatic vessel along with a crew of 200, and they flew to the meeting point in neutral space. They carried no heavy weapons. They flew under a flag of peace. They believed that the Dominion, for all its cruelty, would respect the oldest rule of civilization, that you do not harm those who come to talk. They were wrong. The Dominion ambush came without warning. 6 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and surrounded the diplomatic vessel in seconds. The crew had no time to fight. The ship was boarded, and in 12 minutes, it was over. 187 crew members were killed. The rest were taken prisoner. The 3 generals were separated from the survivors and dragged in chains to the Dominion throne world. Emperor Vorath wanted to send a message, not just to humanity, but to every species in the galaxy. He wanted the universe to see what happened when a small, soft, insignificant species stood in the path of the Dominion. So he gave an order that would change the galaxy forever. He told Grand Inquisitor Thre to make it public. Thre was Vorath's favorite tool. He was tall, thin, with skin like cracked stone, and eyes that held no light. He enjoyed his work. He had broken hundreds of prisoners from dozens of species, and he had never once felt pity. He looked at the 3 human women in chains before him, and saw nothing but an opportunity to perform. The broadcast went out on every galactic channel. Every species with a receiver saw it. Every world, every station, every ship. The 3 generals were on their knees. Their uniforms were torn. Blood ran from cuts on their faces and arms. Thre stood behind them, speaking into the camera with a voice like grinding metal. He called humanity weak. He called them insects. He said that this was what happened to species that forgot their place in the galaxy. He grabbed General Yuna by her hair and pulled her head back, forcing her to face the camera. He told her to beg. He told her to cry and plead for mercy on behalf of her pathetic species. And maybe, just maybe, he would let her die quickly. The galaxy watched. General Yuna looked into the camera. Her left eye was swollen shut. Blood dripped from her lip. Her hands were bound behind her back. And she did not beg. She did not cry. She did not plead. Instead, she spat blood directly onto the camera lens. Then she spoke. Her voice was rough, broken, but every word was clear. "You have no idea what you have just woken up." Dretz struck her across the face, and the broadcast cut to static. On Earth, in a secure intelligence facility deep beneath the mountains, Lieutenant Thre watched the broadcast on a wall of screens. He was 29 years old, a junior intelligence officer who had never seen real combat. His coffee sat untouched on his desk, going cold. His hands were shaking. Around him, the other officers were shouting, cursing, some of them crying. The broadcast had hit every human world simultaneously. Thre knew that right now, across all of human space, billions of people were seeing exactly what he had just seen. He knew that the anger was already building, a wave that would not stop until it crashed into something. But Thre was not shaking from anger. He was shaking because he knew something that most people did not. He knew what humanity kept hidden. He knew about the contingency, the thing that existed in classified files that only a handful of people had ever read. He knew about the Black Fleet, and he knew about the man who commanded it. He picked up the secure communication device on his desk. His fingers were steady now. He entered a code that he had been told he would never need to use. A code that activated a line so secret that it did not officially exist. The line connected. There was silence on the other end. Just breathing. Calm, steady breathing. Thre spoke 5 words. "Get me Admiral Dohan." The breathing paused. Then a voice, low and quiet, like stone settling, answered with 2 words. The broadcast hit every human world like a hammer. Within 1 hour, protests erupted on every colony, from Earth to the farthest outpost. People filled the streets, not with signs and slogans, but with silence. Millions of humans standing together, watching the broadcast on public screens, saying nothing. The silence was worse than screaming. It was the silence of a species making a decision. On Mars, retired soldiers walked into recruitment offices and put their names back on the active list without being asked. On the lunar shipyards, engineers who had been building cargo vessels stopped what they were doing and began pulling old weapon systems out of storage. On Earth, in the great cities and small towns, parents held their children and looked at the sky with hard eyes. Nobody needed to be told what was coming. They all felt it in their bones, the way animals feel a storm before it arrives. President Sujin convened the War Council within 3 hours of the broadcast. She was a small woman with gray hair and a face that rarely showed emotion, but those who knew her well could see the fire behind her eyes. She had been elected on a platform of peace and prosperity. She had spent her entire political career building bridges with alien species. And now, those bridges were burning. The War Council chamber was full. Generals, admirals, intelligence directors, political advisors, all of them talking at once. Some wanted measured response. Some wanted diplomacy through back channels. One admiral slammed his fist on the table and demanded a full fleet mobilization. The room was chaos. Then the door opened, and every voice in the room stopped at once. Admiral Dohan walked in. He was not a large man. He was average height, lean, with short gray hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from dark wood. His eyes were the most unsettling thing about him. Completely, absolutely calm, the way deep water is calm, even when a storm rages above it. He wore no medals, no ribbons, no decorations of any kind. Just a simple black uniform with no rank insignia. Most of the junior officers in the room had never seen him before. Some of them had been told he was a myth, the story invented to scare new recruits. He had not been seen in an official government building in 11 years. The last time he had been activated was during the Outer Rim incident, and the official records of that event had been sealed so deeply that even most admirals could not access them. The unofficial records, the ones whispered about in bars and barracks, said that 3 pirate fleets had threatened human colonies, and that Dohan had made all 3 of them disappear in a single night. He walked to the head of the table. Nobody stopped him. Nobody asked him to identify himself. President Sujin simply nodded at him, the way you would nod at a wolf that had just entered your house because you had opened the door for it. "Are they still alive?" Dohan asked. His voice was low, quiet, the kind of voice that made you lean in to hear it, and once you leaned in, you could not pull away. Lieutenant Tejo, who had been called to the council to present his intelligence report, stepped forward. "Yes, sir. Our sources confirm all 3 generals are alive. Emperor Vorath intends to keep them alive for continued broadcasts. He wants weeks of public torture." Dohan looked at Tejo for a long moment. Then he nodded once. He turned to leave. President Sujin stopped him with a word. "Dohan." He paused at the door, but did not turn around. "Rules of engagement?" she asked. The room held its breath. Rules of engagement were the chains that civilized nations put on their warriors. Rules that said who you could shoot and who you could not. Rules that said how much force was acceptable. Rules that kept the darkness on a leash. Dohan waited. President Sujin looked at the frozen image on the screen, the image of General Yuna on her knees with blood on her face, of General Hana with her arm bent at a wrong angle, of General Minji with bruises covering every inch of visible skin. She looked at that image for a long time. Then she looked at Dohan's back and said 6 words that would echo through history. "There are none. Bring them home." Dohan walked out without another word. Beyond the orbit of Neptune, in a region of space so dark and empty that no civilian ship had ever traveled there, something woke up. Hidden shipyards, built into the hollowed cores of dead asteroids, powered on for the first time in years. Lights flickered to life in the darkness. Engines that had been cold and silent began to rumble. Weapon systems armed themselves. The Black Fleet was not large. It did not need to be. It was 47 ships, each one built for a single purpose. They were not explorers. They were not defenders. They were not peacekeepers. They were the answer to a question that no one wanted to ask, the question of what humanity would do if peace was no longer an option. Captain Yunji stood on the bridge of the flagship, the Gensa, and watched as the fleet formed up around her. She was 36 years old, tall, with sharp features, and eyes that missed nothing. She had served under Dohan for 9 years, and in all that time, she had never seen him hesitate, never seen him doubt, and never seen him show mercy to anyone who had harmed the people he was sent to protect. Dohan arrived on the bridge and sat in the command chair as if he had never left it. Unji handed him a datapad containing everything they knew about the Dominion. Fleet positions, defense grids, troop numbers, the location of the 3 generals. He studied the data for exactly 4 minutes. Then he handed the datapad back. "We will not need the defense grid analysis," he said. Unji raised an eyebrow. "Sir? We are not defending anything." Across the galaxy, alien intelligence networks detected something strange. A massive energy signature moving through human space, coming from a region where no human installations were supposed to exist. The signature was enormous, but its configuration matched no known human ship design. Analysts from a dozen species tried to identify it and failed. A Dominion spy embedded in a neutral space station sent an urgent message to Emperor Vorath. "The humans are mobilizing something. We cannot identify it. Recommend caution." Vorath read the message and laughed. He showed it to Warlord Fennec, his military commander, a massive creature with 4 arms and a face like a scarred boulder. Fennec did not laugh, but he smiled with the confidence of a predator that had never met anything stronger than itself. "What can they possibly send?" Fennec said. "They are traders and farmers. They build hospitals and schools. They do not build weapons." On the bridge of the Jiansa, Dohan sat in silence as the fleet entered faster than light travel, aimed directly at the heart of Dominion space. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. No one spoke unnecessarily. No one needed to. Engie looked at Dohan and asked the only question that mattered. "Timeline, sir?" Dohan stared at the stars, streaking past on the view screen. When he spoke, his voice was so quiet that only Engie could hear him. "They have had our people for 41 hours. Every hour they suffer is a debt." The first Dominion border station to die was called Outpost Rena. It was a small military station sitting at the edge of Dominion space, staffed by 300 soldiers and armed with enough weapons to destroy a small fleet. It had stood for 60 years and had never been attacked, because no species in the galaxy was foolish enough to strike at the Dominion's borders. At 1400 hours, Galactic Standard Time, Outpost Rena sent a routine status report. At 1403 hours, the station went dark. No distress signal, no emergency broadcast, no explosion detected by long-range sensors. It simply stopped existing. When Dominion scouts arrived 6 hours later, they found nothing. Not wreckage, not bodies, not even dust. The station had been erased so completely that if not for the records, no one would have known it was ever there. 12 minutes after Rena went silent, Outpost Veka, 2 light-years away, also went dark. Then, Station Mordra. Then the entire Borderline 7, 12 military installations stretching across 40 light-years of space, all of them gone in under 4 hours. Warlord Fennec received the reports in his command center, and for the first time in his long career, he felt something cold move through his chest. He had fought wars against a dozen species. He had crushed rebellions, burned colonies, and broken fleets. But he had never, not once, seen an enemy erase an entire defense line without leaving a trace. He ordered 400 warships to the last known position of the attack. It was the largest single fleet deployment in Dominion history. 400 capital ships, each one carrying enough firepower to glass a planet, screaming through space at maximum speed to meet whatever was coming. They arrived and found nothing. Just empty space and the fading heat signatures of stations that no longer existed. The fleet captains looked at their sensors and saw only darkness. Some of them, the younger ones, began to feel afraid. The older ones told them to be quiet. Then every screen on every ship on every channel lit up with a single face. Admiral Dohan looked into the camera. His face showed no anger, no excitement, no emotion of any kind. He could have been ordering a cup of tea. He spoke in a voice that was calm and clear, and carried the weight of an avalanche. "I am not here to fight your fleet. I am here for 3 people. Every moment they suffer, I erase one of your worlds from the star maps. The clock is already running." Fennec watched the broadcast from this command ship and clenched his 4 fists. "Find him," he ordered. "Find him and destroy him." They could not find him. The Black Fleet moved through Dominion space like smoke through a forest. Sensors could not track them. Probes could not locate them. They appeared, they struck, and they vanished, and the only evidence they left behind was absence. A fringe Dominion colony world called Tessera was the next target. It was a small world, mostly agricultural, with a population of 2 million civilians and a military garrison of 10,000. One morning, the colonists looked up and saw a single black ship hanging in their sky. It had appeared without warning, without any sensor detection, as if it had simply materialized from nothing. The ship broadcast a single message to the surface: "Evacuate all civilians. You have 9 hours." The garrison commander laughed and ordered his orbital defense network to fire. Every gun, every missile, every beam weapon on and above the planet opened fire on the black ship simultaneously. The sky burned white with the volume of weapons fire. When the light faded, the ship was still there, undamaged, unmoved. It had not even tried to dodge. The garrison commander stopped laughing. He ordered the evacuation. 9 hours later, every military installation on Tessara was reduced to melted glass and scorched earth. Every barracks, every weapon depot, every landing pad. The civilian buildings, the homes and schools and hospitals were untouched. Not a single civilian was harmed. The precision was not just impressive, it was terrifying. It said we can reach anything we want, and we choose exactly what we destroy. Fennec had had enough. He gathered his 400 warships and moved to intercept the Black Fleet directly. His scouts had finally detected their trajectory, a straight line cutting deep into Dominion space, aimed at the throne world itself. Fennec positioned his fleet in their path and waited. The Black Fleet did not slow down. It did not change course. It came straight at 400 Dominion warships like an arrow aimed at a wall. The battle lasted 2 hours and 11 minutes. It was not a battle that military historians would later describe as close. Fennec's ships outnumbered the Black Fleet nearly 10-1, but numbers meant nothing against an enemy that fought like nothing he had ever seen. The human ships moved in patterns that his tactical computers could not predict. They targeted weak points that should have been impossible to detect. They coordinated with a precision that seemed almost inhuman, as if all 47 ships shared a single mind. When it was over, 263 Dominion warships were destroyed or crippled. Fennec's flagship was burning. His fleet was broken. The Black Fleet had lost 4 ships. 4. Fennec, sitting in the wreckage of his command bridge, with smoke filling his lungs and blood running down his face, sent a message to Emperor Vorath. "They are coming. I cannot stop them. Nothing can stop them." Across the galaxy, every species watched the reports in stunned silence. The galactic communication forums, where ambassadors and diplomats from hundreds of worlds exchanged information, erupted with activity. A neutral ambassador from a small, peaceful species posted a single message that would be quoted for centuries. "We always wondered why the humans were so quiet. Now we know. They were quiet because they had nothing to prove." On Kel Prime, in the dark chambers where the 3 generals were held, Grand Inquisitor Thre watched the battle reports with growing horror. Emperor Vorath, refusing to show weakness, ordered Thre to broadcast another torture session, harsher than before, more brutal. He wanted the galaxy to see that the Dominion did not bend, did not break, did not bow. Thre obeyed. He always obeyed. He dragged the 3 generals before the cameras again. General Minji could barely stand. General Yuna's wrists were raw from the chains. General Hana had not spoken in 2 days. Thre stood before the camera and declared that the Dominion was eternal, that no species could challenge it, that humanity's little tantrum would be crushed like every other rebellion before it. Then he turned to the generals. "Your fleet is coming," he said, "and when it arrives, it will burn, just like you." General Hana, who had not spoken in 2 days, who had not made a sound through everything they had done to her, slowly raised her head. Her eyes were bruised and half-closed. Her lips were cracked and dry, but she looked directly into the camera, and she smiled. It was not a smile of hope. It was not a smile of defiance. It was the smile of someone who knew something that her captors did not. The kind of smile that made Thre take a step back, without knowing why. Her voice was barely a breath, but the microphones caught every syllable, and the galaxy heard her clearly. "He is coming." Dreth felt cold. Kel Prime was the most heavily defended world in the galaxy. 3 orbital defense rings surrounded the planet, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a fleet. 2,000 warships patrolled its space. Ground-based weapons could shoot down anything that came within atmosphere. In the 900 years of the Dominion's existence, no enemy had ever reached the surface of Kel Prime. It was not a fortress. It was a statement, a declaration that the Dominion was untouchable. Admiral Dohan looked at it and saw a door. The Black Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kel Prime system. 43 ships, down from 47 after the battle with Phoenix Armada. They were battered, scarred, bleeding light from wounds in their hulls, but they were there. And every sensor on Kel Prime screamed to life when they arrived. Emperor Vorath stood in his throne room and watched the tactical display with a mixture of rage and disbelief. The humans had crossed his entire empire in 5 days. They had destroyed his border defenses, shattered his largest fleet, and now they sat at the edge of his home system like wolves at the door of a sheep pen. But Kel Prime was no sheep pen. Kel Prime was where wolves came to die. "Activate everything," Vorath ordered. "Every ship, every gun, every defense platform, destroy them." 2,000 warships moved to engage. The 3 orbital rings powered their weapons. The sky around Kel Prime became a wall of steel and fire. And then Dohan did something that no one, not Vorath, not the Dominion military, not even his own fleet, expected. He left the Black Fleet behind. The Gensa, his flagship, broke formation and accelerated directly toward Kel Prime, alone. 1 ship against 2,000. 1 ship against 3 orbital defense rings. 1 ship against the most heavily armed world in the galaxy. Captain Unji was not on the Gensa. Dohan had transferred her to the second command ship 2 hours earlier, with a set of orders and a look that told her not to argue. She stood on the bridge of that ship and watched the Gensa fly toward Kel Prime alone. And for the first time in 9 years of serving under Dohan, she felt her heart stop. "What is he doing?" the helmsman whispered. Unji said nothing. She knew exactly what he was doing. He was being the Baba Yaga. The Dominion defense grid opened fire on the Gensa. 2,000 ships fired simultaneously. 3 orbital rings unleashed everything they had. Thousands of guns, tens of thousands of missiles, beams of energy that could cut through mountains. The space around the Gensa turned white with the sheer volume of destruction aimed at a single target. The Gensa did not stop. It did not turn. It flew straight through the fire like a burning arrow shot into a hurricane. Its shields failed in the first 30 seconds. Its outer hull began to tear apart. Atmosphere vented from a dozen breaches. Fires burned through its lower decks. Pieces of the ship broke away and spun into the darkness. But Dohan had not built the Gensa to survive. He had built it to arrive. The ship punched through the first orbital ring, using its own burning mass as a battering ram. It tore through the second ring, leaving a trail of wreckage and flame. It hit the third ring and shattered it. And then it was falling through the atmosphere of Kel Prime like a comet wrapped in fire and fury. The Gensa crashed on the grounds of Grand Inquisitor Dreth's fortress with a sound that shook the continent. The impact crater was 1/2 kilometer wide. The fortress walls cracked. Windows shattered for 10 kilometers in every direction. Dust and smoke filled the air, so thick that the sun disappeared. For a long moment, there was silence. The Dominion soldiers in the fortress stared at the burning wreckage. No one could have survived that. No ship, no crew, no living thing could have come through that fire and that impact and still be breathing. The wreckage moved. A section of hull fell away, and a figure stepped out of the smoke. He was wearing a black combat suit, cracked and scorched, but still functional. He carried a blade in one hand. He was bleeding from a cut above his eye, and he was walking, one steady step after another, directly toward the fortress. Admiral Dohan had arrived. Inside the fortress, Thre received reports that he could not believe. The ground assault alarms were screaming. Sensors showed a single human life sign approaching the main gate. Thre had 2,000 elite guards in the fortress, soldiers trained from birth to kill, armed with the best weapons the Dominion could build. He sent 500 of them to the gate. 40 stealth pods hit the ground around the fortress at the same moment, each one carrying a single human operator from the Black Fleet Special Forces Unit. Captain Unji led them. She had followed her orders. Dohan was the hammer. She was the scalpel. The 40 operators moved through the fortress like something out of a nightmare. They did not fight the way the Dominion expected enemies to fight. They did not charge, did not form lines, did not announce themselves. They came through walls, through ventilation shafts, through floors. They appeared behind guards who had been watching the front, and vanished before the bodies hit the ground. They used the fortress's own size against it, turning every corridor into a trap, and every shadow into a grave. The 2,000 guards began to die, not in battle, in confusion, in fear, in the dark. Dohan walked through the front gate, alone. The guards who met him there fought hard. They were brave, trained, and desperate. It did not matter. Dohan moved through them with the cold efficiency of a man who had spent his entire life preparing for exactly this moment. He did not waste a single motion. He did not rush. He walked, and where he walked, the guards fell. Thre watched on his monitors as his fortress was taken apart from the inside, room by room, floor by floor. He could hear the fighting growing closer, hear the screams of his soldiers growing louder, and then growing quieter, and then stopping altogether. He looked at the monitors and saw the human operators moving through his corridors like ghosts. And he saw Dohan walking toward his chamber with the slow, steady pace of someone who had all the time in the world. Thre ran to the cell where the 3 generals were held. He grabbed General Yuna and pressed a blade to her throat. His hands were shaking. His eyes were wide. He positioned himself behind her, using her body as a shield, and waited for the door to open. The door did not open. It was removed from its frame by a single explosive charge, and Dohan stood in the doorway. He looked at the scene. Thre hiding behind Yuna, the blade at her throat. General Hana and General Minji on the floor, chained, barely conscious, watching. Thre screamed at him, "Stop! Stop or I kill her! I will cut her throat! Do you hear me? I will do it!" General Yuna, with a blade at her neck and nothing left to lose, did not wait to be rescued. She snapped her head backward into Thre's face with every ounce of strength she had left. The sound of his nose breaking echoed off the stone walls. Thre staggered, the blade falling from his grip. Yuna dropped to the floor. Dohan stepped forward. Thre stumbled back, holding his broken face, and hit the wall. There was nowhere left to go. He looked up at Dohan, with the eyes of a creature that had finally met something it could not break, could not torture, could not make afraid. "Please," Thre whispered. Dohan looked at him. Then he looked at the 3 generals, Yuna on the floor, Hana barely breathing, Minji staring at him with eyes that held nothing but iron. He saw what had been done to them. He saw every bruise, every cut, every mark of cruelty that Thre had left on them over the past 6 days. He turned back to Thre. "You touch them," he said quietly. "There is no version of this where you survive." Captain Unji arrived 3 minutes later with the medical team. She found the 3 generals being freed from their chains by Dohan himself. his hands gentle now in a way that seemed impossible for someone who had just walked through fire and an army to reach this room. She did not look at what was left of Thre. Nobody needed to. The generals were carried out on stretchers. As they left the fortress, General Minji grabbed Unji's arm and looked up at the sky. The Black Fleet hung above Kel Prime, surrounding the entire planet. Every gun was aimed downward. Every ship was in position. The whole world, Minji whispered. Unji nodded. The whole world. Emperor Vorath sat on his throne and watched his empire crumble in real time. The tactical displays around him showed the Black Fleet holding position over his world, their weapons pointed at everything he had ever built. His greatest fleet was broken. His border defenses were gone. His most feared fortress had been taken apart by 40 soldiers and 1 man. And now that man was walking toward his palace. Vorath told himself he was not afraid. He had ruled the Dominion for 40 years. He had conquered species that had existed for millennia. He had built an empire that stretched across 900 star systems. He was Emperor Vorath of Kel, and he did not fear a species that had been part of the galaxy for barely a century and a half. He told himself this several times. It did not help. The palace doors opened, and Admiral Dohan walked in. He was alone. He carried no weapon, no soldiers, no fleet at his back. His combat suit was still scorched from the crash of the Jonsa. There was dried blood on his face. He walked down the long hall of the Imperial Palace with the same steady, unrushed pace he had used to walk through the fortress, past the bodies of Dominion soldiers, through fire and smoke and ruin. Vorath's personal guard, 50 of the finest warriors in the Dominion, stood between the throne and the approaching human. They gripped their weapons and waited for the order to attack. Vorath looked at Dohan. Then he looked at his guards. Then he remembered what had happened to the 2,000 guards in the fortress. He raised his hand and told his soldiers to stand down. Dohan walked up to the throne and placed the datapad on the arm of Vorath's chair. On the screen was a single document. Unconditional surrender, Dohan said. Vorath stared at the document. Then he laughed. It was a forced laugh, brittle and hollow, but he committed to it because it was the only weapon he had left. You think you can hold my empire? Vorath said. You were one species. We are dozens. You have what? 40 ships? I have thousands more in my outer territories. You cannot occupy 900 worlds. You cannot control dozens of species. You will stretch yourselves thin, and you will break. And when you do, we will be waiting. Dohan did not argue. He did not threaten. He simply said, I am not here to hold your empire. He reached over and tapped the datapad. The screen changed. A broadcast began transmitting on every galactic channel, to every species, every world, every station in known space. Billions of beings across the galaxy stopped what they were doing and watched. The broadcast showed 3 things. First, it showed the original footage of the 3 generals being tortured. Every blow, every cut, every moment of cruelty that Thre had inflicted on them played across screens on 1,000 worlds. Species that had looked away the first time were forced to see it again. Second, it showed a live feed of the Black Fleet holding position over Kel Prime, the homeworld of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, surrounded, trapped, and helpless. The image was simple, but its meaning was enormous. It said, this is what happens. Third, it showed Dohan's face. He looked into the camera and spoke. His voice was the same as it always was, quiet, steady, and carrying a weight that pressed against the chest of everyone who heard it. To every species watching, humanity asked for nothing. We traded fairly. We honored every treaty we signed. We buried our weapons and chose peace. Not because we were weak, but because we believed that the galaxy deserved better than war. And this empire took 3 of our people and tortured them for the galaxy to see. They wanted to make an example. They succeeded. Just not the example they intended. He paused. The galaxy listened. We did not come here for conquest. We did not come here for territory or resources or power. We came here for 3 people. 3 women who served humanity with everything they had, and who were brutalized for it. And we will always come for our people. Always. It doesn't matter how far. It doesn't matter how many stand in our way. It doesn't matter how powerful you think you are. If you take one of ours, we will come for them. And we will not stop. He turned and looked directly at Vorath, and the camera followed his gaze, so that the entire galaxy saw the Emperor of Kel sitting on his throne, with the eyes of a trapped animal. To Emperor Vorath and the Dominion of Kel, you will release every human prisoner. You will withdraw from every border system you have taken. You will pay reparations to every species you have conquered and subjugated. And you will remember this day, because the next time you think about touching one of ours, you will remember that we were the species you called soft. We were the species you called weak. We were the traders and farmers and builders who smiled too much and cared about sunlight on water. His voice dropped lower, and the galaxy leaned in to hear. Imagine what happens when we stop being soft. The broadcast ended. Vorath signed the surrender. He did it with shaking hands and a face drained of all color, and when the document was complete, Dohan took the datapad, turned his back on the most powerful ruler in the galaxy, and walked out of the palace without looking back. The Dominion did not survive the year. The surrender stripped it of its military power, and within months, the dozens of subjugated species that had been held under its boot for centuries began to rise up. They had watched the broadcast. They had seen that the Dominion could bleed. They had seen that one species, one small, young, insignificant species, had brought the Empire to its knees in 6 days. If the humans could do it, so could they. One by one, the conquered worlds declared independence. The Dominion fragmented, then shattered, then dissolved into history like a bad dream fading in morning light. Emperor Vorath spent his final days in exile on a barren moon, surrounded by the remnants of a court that had once ruled the galaxy. 6 months after the rescue, a memorial ceremony was held on Earth. It was a quiet event, held in a green park on a warm afternoon. The 3 generals stood at the front, alive, healing, and unbroken. Her scars were visible on her face and arms, and she did not hide them. She wore them the way a soldier wears medals, as proof that she had been tested and had not been found wanting. She gave a short speech. She did not talk about revenge or victory. She talked about the crew members who had died on the diplomatic vessel, the 187 people who did not come home. She said their names, one by one, and the crowd stood in silence for every single name. General Hana stood beside her. She had refused medical leave. She had returned to the Deep Space Reconnaissance Division 3 months after the rescue, walking into the command center as if she had never left. Her officers had stared at her. She had stared back. Nobody asked questions. General Minji stood at the edge of the ceremony, watching the sky. She had been given command of the new defense stations being built along the forward Dominion border. She was making them strong, because that was what she did. She was the wall, and the wall did not crack. Admiral Dohan was not at the ceremony. Nobody expected him to be. His rank had been deactivated the day after the rescue. The Black Fleet had returned to its hidden shipyards beyond Neptune and powered down. Official records showed no deployment, no fleet mobilization, no battle. As far as the government was concerned, the Black Fleet did not exist, and never had. Dohan's name appeared in no report, no news story, no history book. He simply disappeared, the way he always did when the work was done. Lieutenant Tejo, now promoted to captain, visited the classified archive one evening after the ceremony. He walked through the silent corridors, passed through 3 security checkpoints, and sat down at a terminal that only 12 people in the government knew about. He opened the file labeled Baba Yaga. The file was thin, most of it was redacted, but at the bottom, there was a single line that had been there since the file was created, decades before Tejo was born. To be activated only when all other options have failed. Tejo stared at the line for a long time. Then he closed the file and walked out of the archive into the night air. The stars were bright above him. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of human space, dozens of freed species were building new lives on worlds that had been prisons for centuries. Somewhere out there, alien ambassadors and diplomats were rewriting their assessments of humanity, adding new words to their files, words like dangerous and unpredictable. And somewhere out there, in the deep dark between the stars, in a place where no map reached and no sensor could find, the Baba Yaga waited, patient, silent, ready. In bars across the galaxy, in whispered conversations and hushed council chambers, alien species shared a new piece of wisdom. It spread from world to world, from species to species, until every corner of known space had heard it. Do not harm a human, not because they are strong, not because their ships are fast or their weapons are powerful, but because somewhere in the dark, the Baba Yaga is listening. And if he hears you, he will come, and he will not stop. On a quiet night on a quiet world, in a small house at the edge of a forest, a man with gray hair and calm eyes sat on his porch and looked up at the stars. He did not think about war. He did not think about death. He thought about 3 women who had been strong enough to survive, and a galaxy that had finally learned a lesson it would never forget. He sipped his tea. The night was peaceful. He intended to keep it that way.